Hey everybody, this video is going to be a build showcase for the normal bow. The bow is the best single target pressure weapon in the game, making it good in all solo and small scale content, so if you're interested in that kind of content, I would highly suggest trying out this build. Starting with the build, obviously for your weapon you're going to have the bow. In order to unlock all of the abilities you need a tier 6 bow, however bow only uses the first two Qs and Ws, so only a tier 4 is really needed for this build. For your chest piece, you want to use a cleric robe if you're going in solo content and a mage robe if you're in group content. For the foot slot, usually you want to go royal shoes, however a nice cheap option that is something very similar is the assassin shoes. For the head slot, there's a lot of different options depending on the type of content you're doing. We'll go more into this later, but your options are mercenary hood, assassin hood, guardian helmet, and soldier helmet. For your cape slot, it's almost always going to be a Thetford cape. For food, you usually want to go deadwater eel stew, although normal beef stews can do quite well as well, especially for a cheap option. And for potions, you're almost always going to be going resistance potions. For abilities, starting with your bow, your Q and your W both have two good options depending if you want to do damage or kite more. For your Q, multi-shot is the kiting option and deadly shot is the damage option. And for W, explosive arrows is the damage option and frost shot is the kiting option. For the passive on your bow, you want to use the one that gives you energy regeneration on every auto attack. You also have the option to go piercing arrows, which increases the damage taken of your targets. However, you might run out of energy if you go that one, so using either a limber escape in combination with that or only using it when you're going to have short fights can be beneficial. On all of your armor pieces, you want to use the damage talents, the first ones, as well as the toughness ones on any plate you are using. Moving on to the strengths and weaknesses of the normal bow in this build, the one really big strength that the normal bow has is it can melt and shred anything, whether it's in plate armor or leather armor, tanky, not tanky, it just dies when it gets focused by the bow. However, this strength is also its weakness. It really only has that single target focus damage, so anything that stops it from being able to do this really counters it pretty hard. There's two main things in the game that counter this, purges and disarms. If your E stacks get purged off as a bow, you really have no damage until it comes off of cooldown again. For this, you usually run Assassin Hood if you're going to be going into matches where you think they might have a purge, so you can get your E back off of cooldown as soon as you get purged. The other hard counter is disarms, which mainly comes from the quarterstaff's W ability Forceful Swing, which makes you unable to auto attack for a certain amount of time. This essentially means that you're not going to be able to get your damage out because you're not going to be able to shoot, which is where all of your damage comes from. For this, people often run Mercenary Hood so that they can cleanse themselves if they get hit by Forceful Swing. Now really quickly before we go into playstyle, there's one quick tech thing that you should know if you want to play the bow that makes it a lot stronger. Normally, when you fire your last arrow, your 18th arrow of your E, as soon as it hits, your 6 stacks reset and you go back to being normal, then you activate your E again, and the next 6 attacks you have to stack up back to that damage potential. However, if you activate your E while an arrow is in the air before it hits a target, it will take one arrow out of the next 18 for your next E, however it will keep your current stacks. This means that after your first 6 attacks, after you get it stacked up once, if you time your attacks correctly, you could theoretically never run out of those 6 stacks and always be at the high damage potential. So for your playstyle in 1v1s like Corrupted Dungeons, you mainly want to focus on your defensives and making sure that they don't get too much value from their stuff, because naturally you'll just out DPS everything you come across if it's just a normal you hitting them and them hitting you. To be honest, a lot of bow matchups are rock, paper, scissors, whether they have ways to get out of your auto attacks or deal with them in some way, or whether they don't. If they do, you usually lose, and if they don't, you usually win. However, especially against melee matchups, it can still be good to go knockback shot and frost shot, so you can kite them and force them to use a lot of resources before they get on top of you, and then you can just stat check them with your E. In group activities like 5v5s and 10v10s is where the bow really shines. Essentially your job is to keep things off of your healers. The bow really excels at shredding down melees who get into your backline and try to harass you and other healers, because if you just start focusing them, you're going to force them to go back very quickly, and especially when you mage robe, it cancels their Hellion jackets and their soldier armors and their stalker jackets and all of the things that they want to use to do damage or survive. That being said, you can also just shred tanks if your team wants to play front to back, or if a tank is out of position or too far forward, you can really kill them quite fast. Really, in a lot of team comps, you're the main person that's going to be getting people low enough for your team to finish off, so you want to make sure you're calling targets, especially ones that are getting low and that you're focusing down. Okay, that's all you need to know if you want to play the bow. I hope you learned something or this video was helpful for you, and if it was, feel free to drop a like or subscribe.